welcome. Today I'll be talking about Hayley Williams' second solo album, that of course being Flowers for Vases slash Descansos, and like a white guy, I didn't know what that meant, so I had to go look it up, and when translated from Spanish, means resting place. And it's actually pretty interesting how that was used with the the transportation of caskets via horseback across great distances to burial grounds. Kind of gives a somewhat of a same feeling that you get from this album. But what's actually pretty crazy regarding this whole album is that this came out over 2 years ago. Can you believe it? February of 2021 is when this album dropped. It is a successor to Petals for Armor, that of course being her first solo album. However, according to Hayley Williams herself, this is more in lines of a prequel to Petals for Armor. And much like the first one, this is a therapy album for her, right? An audio diary of sorts expressing her thoughts and feelings and emotions and hardships of everything that she had to endure and live through, past, present, future, regarding her family. Well, most definitely her ex-husband, right? Definitely a means of therapy for her. Much like Petals for Armor, Flowers for Vases, it's very personal, right? It was very reflective, super emotional, very psychological, right? From the heart, lots of intro and extrospection happening here. Lots of intro and intra-personal states of mind. You got metaphors going on here. You got analogies. Just so much going on in this album, much like Petals for Armor. The main difference, of course, being that this is a much more somber and darker album. Well, Petals for Armor carried much more of the same theme that you hear here. It at least had a few more upbeat tracks. This one definitely not the case. It is much more consistent in its theme, its approach, its sound, and its genre. While Petals for Armor, it had a plethora of stuff going on. Obviously these two are very artsy, but where they differ is that for Petals for Armor, lots of experimental stuff going on here. For Flowers for Vases, much more consistent in it being a main genre, that of course being folk. However, that doesn't mean that it follows it to a T. There are some small exceptions, such as Asistoli having a bit of a Spanish flavor to it, which makes sense, Descansos. And there are some experimental stuff going on here. The latter half of No Use, I Just Do, or the song Descansos itself, which is instrumental, and you got audio recordings of kids talking and making noise. I don't know if that's her. If that comes from like a personal home video recorder when she was a kid, that I don't know, but it at least does follow the experimental stuff, right? This album, while I did say it's been 2 years, right? It doesn't really seem to get talked about a whole lot. It doesn't really seem to have a whole lot of fanfare. I could be completely wrong on that aspect, but I think a large part of that being the reason is because this album just dropped. Like, there really wasn't a big announcement or a lead up, at least as far as I could tell. It just sort of, like I said, just sort of dropped. Because when you see discussion revolving her solo albums, most definitely it revolves around Petals for Armor, or if it comes to the broader range of Paramore itself and these albums just so happen to be brought up, again, it's most definitely going to be Petals for Armor, which I think is a shame because I find Flowers for Vases to be an incredible album. I love it. Obviously, it is very heavy and dark. However, I just think that this is great, and hopefully sometime in the future this would have a much more broader appreciation and people to find out about this album, because I think it's great. Obviously, for these two solo albums, take everything you know about Paramore and throw it out the window. Yes, it's Hayley Williams of Paramore, but the two can be polar. They're polar opposites in terms of everything going on, right? And with that, I can understand why a large group of people, especially fans, might be a bit turned off about these albums, or maybe just not interested. I haven't seen any reviews of this album. However, I am willing to bet that the B word does get brought up, and that being boring. This album, I find, just like Petals for Armor, it's something that you have to be in the mood for, right? Like, you can't just, let's see, you can't just listen to this while on the treadmill. You can't just listen to this while going on a run or exercising or doing yard work, doing any sort of, large scale activities or crafts. When it comes to this album, again, very heavy, dark, psychological, personal, reflective, all of that. You're either going to be doing something small at a table, such as what I've been doing, doing some little crafts while listening to this album, or you're simply just going to sit down and let the album, swirl and you just digest in yourself as you listen to it and take it all in. It's not something that you can just put on like a Paramore album, for instance, or even just something fun like a rock album and just work out. This isn't that type of album. It's very, like I said, very, very personal, very therapeutic for her. You're basically as close as you can get to understanding what she's feeling and what she's went through regarding her family and her ex-husband. But I find this, much like Pales for Armor, to be a very intellectual album. Not saying that Paramore doesn't have that aspect to it. Of course they do, but her two solo albums, but especially this one, I find to be very intellectual, and I just think that it's a great album. But again, it's something that you have to be in the mood to listen to, which also applies to me, because I've been listening to this a number of times. I just got the physical copy for my birthday, and there have been times like, yeah, man, I want to listen to this, but other times it's like, I think I'm just going to be listening to something else. Doesn't mean that it's bad, of course. It's just, you just gotta be in the mood for it, right? So if you've listened to this album, let me know what you think. Do you like it? You love it? Or do you hate it? Hey, it doesn't matter. Just let me know. If you've never listened to this album, I would definitely suggest it. I would say perhaps listen to Pales for Armor first, and then get into this album, because, Pales for Armor, like I said, there are a few more upbeat tracks, and you can leave Pales for Armor with the understanding of what goes through, and then you can get into this album and it will be much more clearer, and you would expect it more, because like I said, this one is much more darker and heavier. But like I said, let me know what you think. Love it, hate it. Personally, I think it's great, but that's just me. Alright guys, thanks for watching, and take care.